Do women hold the key to standards? Hi, my name is Dr. Natalie Jones. I'm a licensed therapist. I've been counseling men and women who have experienced abuse as well as those who have been perpetrators of abuse. I have a commenter here. She says, Dr. Natalie, do you think we women hold the key to what standard men treat us? Like, say, if we women woke up one day and all of a sudden stopped sleeping with men outside of relationships and said no to hookups, would it completely change everything in society? And would men put more effort into investing into emotional connections with women and marriage? This is a good question. I think it's a simple question, because I think what you're asking, if does A plus B equal C, and that's not meant to be disrespectful, but and just sort of thinking about what you're asking, I think, yes, women hold the key, but I also think men hold the key. But I also think there's so many layers that go into what you're asking. Part of why I think hookup culture is the way that it is because of all of the messages that we're receiving from the top down, from politics to what's on television and media, as well as social media, music, subliminal messages, all of that kind of stuff, to average, every ordinary people just going out on dates on dating apps, and things like that. So I think all of us hold the key, but I think if women certainly played a part into it, we could certainly both individually and collectively, I think there can definitely be some changes implemented. But I think collectively as a society, we all have to play a part, both women and men. And so I think, first of all, again, going back to the top-down approach, starting with politics, I think there definitely needs to be a bigger stance on, sort of sex and hookup culture. And I think we need to see more barriers, more education, things like that coming from, all the way up to presidency, vice presidency, our government. I think our government needs to take a more proactive role in, looking at that thing, looking at how sex is portrayed to our society as a whole. Because unfortunately, when we think about politics, a lot of our politicians have gotten into a lot of trouble around sex and things like that, impulsivity, legal cases and things like that. So I think it starts with our representation from government. But I also think, and most of those people that have gotten into trouble, unfortunately, have been male figures. So I think there is an example there. But I also think there's an attitude that I'm above the law, so I can do what I want, and I'm above the law. So I think there's the attitude there as far as sex, illegal practices, unethical practices, things like that. When we think about media, I think there should be a limitation in exposure to sex in the media, from pornography to sex in movies, messages that are put in music, R&B, hip hop, all of it is overly sexual. I think the apps too are also very responsible for hookup culture. I think the apps are promoting hookup culture and dangerous behavior. I think we all saw the advertisements where where the dating apps are saying that women don't need to be celibate. They need to just, let go of all that. So I think there's a lot of things that play a part in that. However, I do think that women are very powerful. I also think as a society there becomes a threat when women uphold standards. and access to bodies. That's why, unfortunately, we have a lot of men that are trying to regulate women's bodies. And so I think, the woman's body is very powerful. Um, and so, yes, I do think that we uphold a standard, again, on every single level to the way that men treat us. And I'm certainly not saying that I'm perfect or anything like that, but I'm saying that as a whole, like, a lot of the women that we pedestalize or that get a lot of attention on social media and on television are overly sexual. They're highly sexually inappropriate. And that's kind of how they make their money. And I'm not trying to disrespect any of those women, but I'm just saying that is a concern when that becomes the norm, when young people are looking up to that on television, because it's like, what's left to the imagination? What's left to want to get to know, if that makes sense. But I also think the lack of fathers plays a part in a lot of stuff, or the lack of male presence in teaching young men and young boys. I think that is also a major part, and girls too. I think a father is very important, and what we're seeing is a rise of single parents or people who are okay with the lack of stability in a relationship and bringing children into the world. There's, so those kinds of dynamics all play a part in just some of the messages that we allow. But I think, we need more of maternal and paternal guidance there. But I also think, we have to look to our teachers. Who are the people that are teaching us our etiquette? Who are the people that are teaching us our value and our self-worth? Who are our role models that are, modeling appropriate behavior, modeling appropriate courtship, modeling consent, modeling when and when not to have sex and things like that. So I think those are things that we need to look to. And, there's not a lot of healthy role models that I've seen in today's day and age. So I think definitely women could band together and should band together collectively and have more of a standard. But I also think that that's twofold, that there's young men that also need to have a standard. Young men also need to or older men also need to mentor younger men about sort of having better control over their bodies and just how to manage lust and how to have more of a purpose and things like that. So I think there's so many things, and I'm sorry if I'm rambling, but this is such a great question. I feel like there's so many directions that I want to answer, that I want to take this answer, but there's so many different layers to it that I think that we need. And I feel like standards are so important. But I think one of the biggest things that helps people have standards is confidence and self-worth. But I think also education plays a big part in having standards as well. Because people need to actually understand what it means to have a standard. They need to understand what it means to have consent. They need to understand what's happening when they're just sort of giving in to lust and hookup culture all of the time. So I hope that helps. I'm sorry if this is too convoluted of an answer. If you guys hate it, I might redo it. But thanks so much. Let me know what you think.